A very large U.S. military force is now near Venezuela. It is the largest U.S. force in the region since 1989. Warships, submarines, and thousands of Marines are deployed. The U.S. sent destroyers, a cruiser, and a nuclear submarine carrying Tomahawk missiles. An amphibious assault ship, the USS Iwo Jima, is also present, carrying aircraft and helicopters. More than 4,500 U.S. Marines and sailors are here. 9 vessels are deployed, and 10 F-35 fighter jets are in Puerto Rico. The Trump administration says this force is to stop drug trafficking. But this large military presence seems too much for stopping small drug boats. Most drugs enter the U.S. by other ways, like the Pacific Ocean or by air. Many believe the real goal is to remove Venezuela's president, Nicolás Maduro, and change the government. The U.S. government has placed a record $50 million bounty on President Maduro's head. It is the largest bounty ever. The U.S. calls Maduro a narco-terrorist, claiming he runs a drug cartel, the Cartel of the Suns, that sends drugs into the U.S. The situation is tense. The first shots have been fired. On September 2nd, a boat with 11 Venezuelans was hit by a missile in international waters, likely from a U.S. drone. Everyone on board died. The U.S. government claimed the boat carried drugs and the people were cartel members. This new type of strike differs from past U.S. actions. It shows the conflict is growing. 2. Venezuela's rich past. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. This is even more oil than Saudi Arabia has. Because of this oil, Venezuela was once a very rich country. In the 1970s, it had the highest income per person in all of Latin America. However, Venezuela's oil is thick and hard to clean. To help, big companies from the United States came to Venezuela. These companies, like Exxon and Chevron, worked with Venezuela's state oil company. They shared oil profits. This helped Venezuela learn how to get and clean oil. It also made the economic relationship with the United States very strong. American companies built special factories near the U.S. coast to clean Venezuela's heavy oil. By the late 1990s, most of Venezuela's oil went to the United States. It was the biggest source of oil for the U.S. from any single country. But this wealth also brought big problems. A lot of money was stolen by corrupt government officials. Also, Venezuela started to depend only on oil. Other businesses did not grow. Oil became nearly all of the country's exports and a large part of the government's money. Then, in the 1980s, the price of oil dropped a lot. It went from about $40 a barrel to just $10 or $12. This greatly hurt Venezuela's economy because it depended so much on oil. The country faced high inflation and huge debts. In 1989, the government had to take money from the International Monetary Fund. This meant they had to cut many services, fire workers, and raise taxes. People were very angry. They had seen corrupt officials steal billions of dollars, and now ordinary people were suffering. This led to many protests and riots across the country. There was strong anger against the government. 3. A new leader. Hugo Chavez became Venezuela's leader in 1998. He was a revolutionary who promised big changes. He said he would use the country's large oil wealth to help the poor. At first, many people liked his ideas. His new government introduced socialist policies. These policies helped to reduce poverty quite a lot. Many families saw their lives improve. However, Chavez also made some decisions that later caused problems. He decided to fire thousands of experienced oil workers. These were the people who knew best how to manage and extract oil. Their departure meant Venezuela lost a lot of important skills and knowledge in its main industry. He also took control of foreign oil companies' assets. Major companies like Exxon and Chevron had invested heavily in Venezuela's oil. When Chavez took over their assets, it sent a bad signal to other foreign businesses. This action badly damaged the oil industry. It meant less money coming into Venezuela for new projects and repairs. These changes also hurt Venezuela's relationship with the United States. The U.S. had been a major buyer of Venezuelan oil for a long time. Now, the trust between the two countries lessened. Venezuela's debt began to grow significantly. Its important oil reserves also started to get smaller, partly because of these policies and because Chavez began to give discounted oil to other nations, such as Cuba and Nicaragua. This approach, while popular at first with some, created a system that was hard to maintain. It made Venezuela too dependent on oil and less efficient. Chavez also changed laws, removing limits on how many times a president could be elected. He even shut down some news outlets. By 2013, when Chavez passed away, Venezuela's national debt had more than doubled. Its oil reserves continued to decrease. These actions set the stage for bigger problems in the future. 4. Hard times begin. After Hugo Chavez died in 2013, Nicolás Maduro became the new president. Soon, Venezuela faced a very difficult time. The global price of oil collapsed in 2014. This was terrible for Venezuela because its economy depended heavily on oil. With less money coming from oil, the government could no longer afford the programs that Chavez had started to help poor people. Many services and jobs were cut. People in Venezuela became angry. Protests and riots started in many cities. President Maduro responded with force, using violence to stop the protests. This made him very unpopular with the people. The United States government also watched these events closely. The U.S. had already declared Venezuela a national security threat. Later, President Donald Trump's first government began a strong push against Maduro. In 2018, Venezuela held another presidential election. Many people, including the United States and other countries, said this election was not fair. There were many problems, and major opposition candidates were not allowed to run. President Donald Trump's government refused to accept Maduro as the winner. The U.S. then recognized Juan Guaido, an opposition leader, as the interim president of Venezuela. Diplomatic ties between the two countries were cut. President Trump started a maximum pressure campaign against Venezuela. He put many severe rules, called sanctions, on the country. These sanctions aimed to hurt Venezuela's oil industry. For example, U.S. companies were stopped from buying Venezuelan oil. Other sanctions made it hard for Venezuela to sell its oil to other countries or get spare parts for its oil equipment. This caused Venezuela's oil production to fall greatly. The country, which has the largest oil reserves in the world, was producing very little oil. The sanctions and the drop in oil prices caused Venezuela's economy to collapse. Between 2014 and 2021, the economy shrank by 3/4. This was one of the biggest economic collapses in modern history. Prices for goods rose incredibly fast, a problem known as hyperinflation. The Venezuelan currency became almost worthless. Life became extremely hard for millions of people across the country. 5. Big problems and new friends. The sanctions imposed by the United States brought very bad results for Venezuela. The country's economy faced huge problems. Between 2014 and 2021, the Venezuelan economy shrank by about 3/4. This was one of the biggest economic collapses seen in modern history. Hyperinflation also became a severe issue, meaning prices for goods rose extremely fast. By 2018, prices had increased by a shocking 130,000%. This made Venezuelan money almost worthless. People struggled greatly to buy even basic items. Essential goods and services such as food, clean water, and gasoline became very scarce. Life became very hard for many citizens. By late 2022, more than half of all Venezuelans were living in poverty. This was the highest poverty rate in South America. This terrible situation led to a large humanitarian crisis. Many people decided to leave the country to find a better life. Nearly 8 million Venezuelans fled their homes and moved to other nations around the world. A large number of these people went north, trying to reach the United States. By 2021, Venezuelans became the second most common nationality arriving at the U.S. southern border, after Mexicans. The number of undocumented Venezuelans living in the United States grew significantly. From about 64,000 in 2019, it reached about 650,000 by 2023. However, the U.S. sanctions did not achieve their main goal. They failed to remove President Nicolás Maduro from power. He held on to his position and strongly stopped any protests or opposition against his government. Because of this isolation from the U.S. and Western countries, Maduro sought new alliances. He strengthened Venezuela's ties with nations that are also seen as U.S. adversaries: Cuba, Russia, China, and Iran. Cuba provided important intelligence support. Russia and Iran supplied military arms to Venezuela, helping replace older weapons from the U.S. China became a major buyer of Venezuela's oil, which was crucial as its own oil production had fallen. This help from new friends supported Maduro's dictatorship. From a geopolitical view, Venezuela began to act more like a second Cuba in the Western Hemisphere, creating a foothold for these global powers. 6. More years of trouble. The new Biden government tried a different way. It eased some rules or sanctions on Venezuela. This happened after Russia went to war in Ukraine in early 2022. Biden let the oil company Chevron work in Venezuela again. This was to help put more oil on the market and lower prices, which would hurt Russia. In late 2023, Biden also agreed to let Venezuela sell its oil and gas for 6 months. In return, President Maduro promised to hold a free and fair election the next year, in 2024. The Biden government hoped this would remove Maduro from power, as the earlier maximum pressure plan had not worked. But Maduro soon did something else. He held a public vote in Venezuela about taking 70% of neighboring Guyana's land. This land was rich in oil. Many people worried Maduro was planning to invade Guyana to take these oil fields. These oil fields were mostly managed by the American company ExxonMobil. The United States government would not allow Venezuela to take Guyana's land and oil. Maduro also used this land dispute for his own reasons. He accused opposition leaders of trying to stop the vote. He then ordered the arrest of many of his opponents. This stopped them from running in the 2024 election. Because of Maduro's actions, the Biden government put some sanctions back on Venezuela in April 2024. The presidential election in July 2024 was full of problems, just like the one in 2018. Both Maduro and the main opposition candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, said they had won. Maduro said he won by a small amount, but did not show the vote results. Gonzalez and the opposition said they won by a lot, and showed clear papers from polling places to prove it. The United States and its friends in Europe, Australia, and parts of Asia said Maduro's win was not real. They said Edmundo Gonzalez was the true winner. But Russia, China, Iran, and Cuba supported Maduro's claim. People protested against Maduro in Venezuela. He used the army to stop these protests. Thousands of people were arrested, and many died. Maduro also ordered the arrest of Gonzalez, who then left the country and went to Spain. He still lives there today, and the U.S. and Europe still see him as Venezuela's rightful leader. Maduro clearly became a strong dictator, stealing elections without caring about what others thought. 7. A dangerous game. After diplomacy failed, the second Trump administration returned to a policy of strong pressure. This time, it used gunboat diplomacy. The United States sent many warships, submarines, and thousands of Marines close to Venezuela. This was the largest U.S. military force in the region since 1989. The U.S. government gave 3 main reasons to remove President Nicolás Maduro. First, it wanted to stop the flow of illegal drugs. The Trump administration said Maduro ran a drug cartel called the Cartel of the Suns. They claimed this group sent drugs into the United States. The U.S. placed a $50 million reward on Maduro's head, calling him a narco-terrorist. Second, the U.S. wanted to stabilize oil markets. Removing Maduro could let Western oil companies return to Venezuela. This would put more oil into the world market, lowering prices. Lower oil prices would help the U.S. economy and hurt Russia. The U.S. also worried about Venezuela's threats to Guyana's oil fields. Third, the U.S. aimed to remove a military foothold for Russia and Iran in the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela had become close with these countries. Russia had plans for an ammunition factory and sold weapons. Iran also shared drone technology. The U.S. did not want its adversaries to grow stronger nearby. The U.S. likely would not invade. However, it might use surgical airstrikes. Tomahawk missiles and F-35 fighter jets could hit drug sites, military bases, or oil facilities. Another option was to support an internal rebellion. The U.S. hoped the large reward for Maduro and the military presence might encourage people to rise against him. If a rebellion began, U.S. air power could assist them, much like in Libya in 2011. The U.S. also supports opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez as Venezuela's true president. Trump has favored these kinds of targeted strikes and raids before, rather than large land wars. 8. What happens next? A full invasion of Venezuela by the United States is not likely. The U.S. military has sent ships and some Marines near Venezuela, but these forces are not large enough for a big ground war to occupy the country. However, smaller targeted attacks are a real possibility. The U.S. has powerful weapons ready, including Tomahawk missiles on its destroyers and submarines and F-35 fighter jets located in Puerto Rico. These could be used for surgical aerial strikes against key targets. This might include places linked to drug trafficking, military command sites, or even Venezuela's remaining oil facilities. Venezuela's military is quite weak and poorly maintained. Many years of strict sanctions have made it almost impossible for them to get spare parts or perform regular maintenance on their equipment. Their ships, planes, and tanks are old and in bad condition. For example, in 2020, a Venezuelan patrol boat, Nuada, tried to intercept a cruise ship and ended up colliding with it and sinking itself. Venezuela also has Russian S-300 air defense systems, but newer U.S. F-35 jets could likely avoid their detection. So, the Venezuelan military would find it very difficult to stop modern U.S. air or missile attacks. Still, attacking Venezuela carries many serious risks. Removing a country's leader, like Nicolás Maduro, does not always lead to peace or stability. History shows that in places like Iraq and Libya, removing their leaders led to decades of chaos and fighting. In Venezuela, this could make the country even more unstable. Armed non-state actors, like groups that operate near the border with Colombia, could become stronger in a time of confusion. Some people might also unite more behind Maduro if they see foreign attacks, making his power stronger instead of weaker. The situation between the two countries is becoming very tense. Venezuela's defense minister, who himself has a bounty on his head from the U.S. government, stated that U.S. intelligence and spy flights have increased 3 times over the last month. He believes the U.S. is looking for a reason to start a military action. Recently, a U.S. Navy warship reportedly searched a Venezuelan fishing boat inside Venezuela's own waters. This was described by Venezuela as an illegal and hostile act, showing the growing pressure. With these events, the United States and Venezuela are clearly on the edge of a serious conflict. Both sides are watching each other very closely. What do you think will happen next for Venezuela and the United States?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.